wonderful time of the year is around that time that baseball starts and you have the Masters and you have the Final Four. That to me is probably the most wonderful time of the year. We are from the Shack Al Mercadante Studios, and we have a lot to talk about. Tim Brando is going to join us today. Always great to talk to Timmy B about things. Very opinionated young man. He's been all over the place. I can't even think of all this. I'm just going to try to name them. Raycom, Jefferson Pilot, CBS, started Game Day at ESPN, now Fox. I mean, he's been everywhere, and he's done it all, and he's really, really good at what he does. We used to have a kind of a running relationship where I would have him on my radio show. The next week I'd be on his radio show. So look forward to talking to him. He's got really strong opinions about a lot of things. Reagan's producing today. Evan's still out with the COVID. Or maybe he has a flu-rona. I don't know. Did you hear that? That now they have a flu-rona? That's a new thing. How many diseases can we have? Hopefully none. That would be a good answer. So we got a lot to talk about, and of course we'll get to all of our great stuff a little bit later in the show. I do want to start out by talking about Kaiir Elam deciding to turn pro, which is no big surprise. Kaiir Elam, when we went into this season, we all went, well, this is the last year we'll see Kaiir Elam. I mean, he's projected as a first round draft pick, and so it wasn't a big surprise. And then all of a sudden, because everything Billy Napier has touched has kind of turned to gold. I mean, not everything, because there have been players who have committed elsewhere that they were recruiting, but he salvaged a recruiting class that everybody thought was going to be just terrible, and he keeps building on it. And then now Trevor Etienne commits to Florida. Of course, the brother of Travis. Travis was an unbelievable player. I think he was Trevor Lawrence is really good, but I think Etienne was a big part of why Clemson was so successful during that run. No question about it. But anyway, that doesn't mean his brother is going to be the greatest thing in the world. It doesn't mean his brother is going to be Emmitt Smith or whatever you want to say, but it's still a big pickup, and maybe he will be. But that's the thing. You bring in players, the better your players, the better the competition, the better they may turn out to be. There's very few players in the history of college football who came out of high school and you knew they were going to be stars, and it panned out, and then they became NFL stars. There aren't that many. For example, there's nobody. I've been told this, and again, I don't know, it's by people who've told me things, that the one player who could have played who was a freshman in college that could have played in the NFL was Adrian Peterson. That's the one guy that could. So, I mean, now I'm not trying to, again, I think Trevor Etienne is a huge pickup, and it's part of why things seem to be going well for this staff, this situation. They're Rob Sale is supposed to be coming on board. May have happened right now. I don't know. Who's an offensive line coach? He's been at Georgia. He's been with the Giants. And they're going to hire another coach from the Rams. Apparently, now you can start hiring those NFL guys. And I'd been told several weeks ago by somebody, a good source, that there was going to be some major hires here, and we'll see who they are. But again, some of them, it's kind of like with the Gator fans right now. We're going, why do we need an assistant nutrition coach? I mean, you got. I'm surprised there's not a parking coach. Somebody to help these players park, because clearly they couldn't do it without getting tickets. But that's been that way forever. Everybody gets tickets. I got tickets. I got booted once. I got booted because they give me a wrong parking pass, and I was doing the radio show, and I got a wrong. Basically it was a counterfeit, and I didn't know it, so I got booted. You ever been booted, Reagan? No. Okay. Most people don't get booted. You got to have a lot of tickets. I didn't have any tickets. I had one thing, and anyway, I'm not going to get into that. So there has been some more good news for Florida football. Certainly bringing Mike Peterson in, huge for me. Whether it's huge for Florida or not, I assume it is. I think it is. I think he's a really good coach, good recruiter, good person, one of my favorite people in the world. I can't wait to see him again. We've talked. I can't talk to him right now because I would assume that Coach Napier will take the Saban approach, which is assistants can't talk, and which is it's the dumbest rule ever. But how's it working for Nick? Pretty good. So maybe I'm the dumbest person ever. And then they're a big weekend this weekend for recruiting for Florida to maybe, boy, if they make some impact. And again, all I do is see what these kids are doing based on what they're putting on Twitter. And you read, oh, man, I like Florida. I like the way Florida, all this stuff. I don't think it's going to reflect as much on this class, but it is reflecting already. But I don't think it's going to reflect as much on this class as it is that Florida's getting in the doors. They're getting in the doors. They are ramping it up, everything as we know. And I think they're just going to, like I've said, this probably, and you hope, will be the worst recruiting class that Billy Napier has. Worst one. From this point forward, it's only going to go up. And I would think next year's is going to be the best, maybe one of the best ones, kind of like Urban did. That second class he had there was some guys in there named Tebow and Harvin and Spikes, and they were pretty good. So we had all that going on this week, and also basketball playing look. I don't think anybody went into that game thinking Florida was going to go to Auburn and win. Auburn is really good. They're ranked number 4 in the country right now, and they have become the new Florida. That's the bottom line. And Gator fans don't want to hear that, especially with sweaty Bruce Pearl. But they have become the new Florida in terms of the arena. And again, I think Florida probably did a good job in making a more comfortable arena at the O-Dome, but probably made it a little quieter. It's not the case at Auburn. Auburn's loud, and you could tell Mike White talking after the game. I was on the Zoom call. It was a problem. They had a hard time dealing with it early. And one other thing he said about this game was that they sometimes play too hard. And okay, I can live with guys playing too hard, and they are out of control at times. The first half of that game, it was like a team playing that had never thought about an offensive philosophy. It was just crazy, and they need to get more under control. There's no doubt about it. But they're sitting in a bad situation right now. I mean, I know they weren't going to probably win that game. The Alabama game was a winnable game, and then Alabama turns around and loses to Missouri. I was watching those games Saturday, and I'm like, come on, man. Come on, Florida. And now Florida gets LSU, which is really good. They've lost one game all year. It's not going to probably go well this year for Florida. I don't know. Like, I've said this to people. I think the SEC has 4 teams that could win the whole thing, win the national championship. Florida's not one of them. I don't think they can even get in the tournament right now. And right now they wouldn't. They're 51 in the net. No matter what anybody says, Lenardi or anybody, they're 51 in the net, and they miss so many opportunities, whether it was the Oklahoma game where they could have won that game. They could have won that game. Whether it was the obviously these last 2 games in the SEC where they could have won. There was one other game. Maryland would have been a big win for them. But they're 51 in the net, and their big wins, Ohio State. And that's a great win, neutral site. But that home win against FSU ain't going to be quad 1. It may not be quad 2 by the time the year's over because FSU is struggling. And they're number 70 in the net. So could be maybe the state gets shut out on NCAA teams this year. We'll see how that works out. So anyway, there will be heat on Mike White. And look, I've always told people this. There's real heat and there's perceived heat. Real heat is when it comes from the athletic director and the president. President's leaving, so I don't think there's going to be any heat from him. But certainly from Scott Strickland, I know he loves Mike White to death, but there's going to be a point. He loved Dan Mullen to death. There's a point where you just go, it's not working. I'm not saying it's not working. I'm saying they've been dealing with, think about what these guys have had to deal with. Not only COVID, but Keontae, and then COVID again, where you don't get to play a softer opening. It was like a cushier landing with Ole Miss, although Ole Miss is really good. They're just not at that level. Auburn's really good. I mean, Alabama, I think, is really good. I think they'll figure things out. And now you get LSU, which is really good. The league is really good. Florida's not. They're not good offensively. Castleton kind of does a lot of great things. Every once in a while, he slumps off and doesn't do so well. But they just don't have a second guy that can score on a consistent basis. They're a weird team. I don't know. So you have that all going on. Obviously tonight, Alabama, Georgia, and I'm gonna watch it. I look. It won't take a lot to make me go to bed tonight. If one team gets way ahead, I'll just go. That's it. Hey, going to sleep. Got up early today. All right, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. Again, we're gonna have Tim Brando on, and I know he'll want to talk about it. NFL Steelers win and get in, somehow sneak into the playoffs. A little bit later, we'll have the Hesser and Kipke Monday spreads, and we got all the NFL spreads for the first round of playoff games. Colts blow it about as bad as you can blow it, losing to that terrible Jacksonville team, which had won 2 games. But I watched a good part of the game. Jacksonville was a better team. And, the Colts are, for some reason, since 2015, here's a great stat: 7-0 against the Jaguars in Jacksonville. It's not that hard a place to play. Okay, it was hard for Georgia for a while, but since 2015, they're also 15-35 against the rest of the league at home. I don't know what it is. Some reason they find a way to do that. Latest to the transfer portal. Plumlee, the quarterback / receiver from Ole Miss, is now going to UCF because they've told him he can play quarterback, and then they'll switch him to wide receiver. Gene Chizik to North Carolina. Remember we talked last week about how Gene Chizik may be going to the Birmingham Stallions in the USFL instead, but he said, no, back up on that, because he knew this deal was maybe working in North Carolina, and it did. So he's going to North Carolina. There was a lot of people that wanted Gene Chizik to be hired at Florida as defensive coordinator when Dan Mullen was still here. They thought it would be a good mix. But obviously, since Chizik played here, cannot put enough sarcastic quotations around that. He practiced here, and then I don't think he ever played in a game. All right, so that is that's our opener. And we'll take a break. We'll come back. Tim Brando's going to join us. And then, of course, we'll get to all of our fun things that we like to do. We're looking for a couple of sponsors now. Obviously, when football season ends, and I don't blame people for doing this, but some people fall off the sponsorship thing because they wanted to go hard on football. But look, there's a lot going on. This is the time of year when there is so much going on, and it will continue with football. We'll have spring football. We'll have more stories going on. Basketball will be going on. But not only that, but we have obviously gymnastics, and I would love to get a segment that was sponsored by somebody, a gymnastics segment where all we talked about was gymnastics for that period, just a little short period, because this is one of the great teams in the country. I was trying to look to see where I had them. That's where I have them. I'll get to them in the Adams Ripco to Go Gator of the weekend, which may give you a hint who that may be. So we got all that to talk about and more. We'll be right back with Tim Brando on another duly noted podcast presented by Titan MRI from the Shaq Allen Mercandani Studios.
Car accidents, trucking accidents, motorcycle accidents, and wrongful death. If injured or killed by the negligence of others, who will fight for the compensation you deserve? Shakow and Mercadante, 5 lawyers, more than 100 years of combined legal experience, millions in settlements and verdicts. Call Shakow and Mercadante, 371-3000. Rebuilding lives.
Titan MRI, North Central Florida's premier independent diagnostic testing MRI facility. At Titan MRI, we're focused on you, the patient, having a great customer experience. Our MRI equipment is modern and 75% quieter than any unit in its class. And our MRI unit has one of the largest openings of any of the newer high-strength MRI units, which allows comfortable scanning for potential claustrophobic and larger patients. At Titan MRI, we look forward to serving you.
Another duly noted podcast comes to you from the Coach's Podcast Room at Spurrier's Gridiron Grill and Celebration Point. You can watch and listen to us on Facebook and YouTube for every podcast that we do on Mondays and Fridays at 2 o'clock. Listen to the podcast whenever on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Overcast, any of the other 39 platforms where you can find this podcast or your favorite podcast. Remember to like, follow, and subscribe. If you have any questions or comments, leave them in the comments section below or call me if you want to do some advertising at 352-317-3444.
Great food, great atmosphere, a diverse menu, everything made from scratch, plenty of space, and locally owned. These are all the characteristics of a great restaurant, and you can find each and every one of them right here in Gainesville at Ballyhoo Grill. Ballyhoo Grill prepares all of their food fresh every day, from their salad dressing to their award-winning soups. Bring your family and enjoy dinner under the Tim Brando Tiki Hut while listening to live music. Or if you're running low on time to eat out, they also deliver through Uber Eats, Bite Squad, and Postmates. A Gainesville staple that's been open for over 30 years. Check out Ballyhoo Grill on Facebook or at ballyhoogrill.com.
Hello there, everybody. I'm Pat Dooley, of course, from another duly noted podcast. And this is a great Adam Brewer, and he's just opened up a place here, Adam Brewer To Go. What would give you the idea to do this, to have a to-go place like this?
We really like the fast concept, being able to get the barbecue. Now we have this new online ordering. So before it was a call ahead carry out, quick service. We have like a curbside kind of a deal where everything's ready to go for you. And then we thought, wow, we have a really great dine-in concept, but how can we make this streamlined for the customer and make it easy and accessible for all parts of town?
Adam's Rib Co. To Go. Come on down and enjoy it. More than 6,000 veterans take their lives each year, with more than 500 of them occurring in Florida. The Fire Watch Council was established to unite our war fighters and allies to stand watch and build a mutual aid network of veterans and civilian volunteers across Florida trained to identify risk factors of veterans in crisis and to direct those veterans to needed resources. You can invest an hour to join our support network by becoming a watchstander to stand in the gap and support our veterans. Go to thefirewatch.org to learn how to get involved, get off the sidelines, and take a stand on behalf of our veterans. Okay, and welcome back to another duly noted podcast. Of course, we are live at Steve Spurrier's Gridiron Grill. The show, of course, presented to you by Gainesville Titan MRI. And also we are at the Shakow Mercadante Studios, as you all know. And it's always a great pleasure to talk to our next guest. I've known him for a long time. And I will say this, Tim Brando from Fox, this is our first live Zoom call where there were Emmys in the background.
Thank you.
How many of those are up there? I think I see 4, right?
Yeah, there are 4. Yeah.
Wow.
There's a couple of more. We use them for, to help hold up lampshades.
That's pretty impressive, though,
Thanks.
But it's been a great career, and I know you've been, a lot of people remember you from the old days of Jefferson Pilots and Raycom and all that, and then of course to CBS and ESPN and now Fox. I mean, you're kind of like some of those people who win get to the NCAA tournament with 4 different teams? Like you're the Long Kruger of announcing.
Yeah. The translation, I couldn't keep a job, but it was. But the good news is, Pat, and I've said this many times, there are a lot of guys that are 65 years of age that just hope the phone rings. And my phone has never stopped ringing. Knock on wood, and I'm blessed that way. But I don't know that I would have lasted this long had I not popped around a little bit. Had I not worked for different entities. Every route is a little bit different. I think about tonight, Chris Fowler's calling the national championship game. A lot of people think he replaced me on game day. He really didn't. I started game day with Pino and Lee Corso in 1987, but I never wanted to do that show. I never wanted to be a studio host, really. I wanted to call games. So I was always looking to get out. And when Vince Dooley got out of coaching, I got a new contract at ESPN to move home, build my house where I've been for the last 31 years. And I worked with Vince on CFA afternoon games while Ron Franklin and Mike Godfrey were working the primetime games. And, I thought, gosh, I'll be here for another 20 years. Well, my value was a little different to ESPN once I left the studio. And it really sort of signaled the beginning of my having to move away and continue to grow, which I went to Turner for 3 years, did the Braves, got a ring, did the Hawks, did the NBA, did Inside the NBA. And was discovered by CBS during the 96 Olympics, did my first NCAA tournament for them. And then I had an 18-year run at CBS and that abruptly ended in 13. And I'm writing about it in a book that will probably take a couple of years to get out, but it's we have great relationships with all the people we've worked with, but sometimes there are impasses. And mine really stemmed from the way my radio show on television on their cable network was taken off the air. It was taken off pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And so, I landed on my feet at Fox, and now I've been there. I'll be ending my 8th year in March at the Big East tournament with Fox. It's hard to believe it's been that long, but it has. But Fowler is doing the national championship and really had not done much play-by-play at all. And has been now at ESPN. He's a stalwart. He's been there 30 years. And Bob Rathman, speaking of Jefferson Pilot and Raycom days, an ACC guy, replaced me with the Hawks. He's been there forever. So some guys, get a job and they stay, and God bless them. I think that's wonderful. But for me, it just worked out, and I think probably my personality is suited to that working with different people and having something fresh to do has always benefited me well. And I'm glad that I took this route because it enabled me to stay relevant. I think a lot of times guys, when they stay too long at one place, I think they become stale, and I think they stop growing. I don't know that their careers continue to blossom. And for me, I've been really very fortunate that every stop I've made, I feel like I grew. And at this stage of your life, that's really what you want.
Yeah, let's talk about that and the fact that obviously you go from football to basketball, and yet you deal with those changing sports. But what's it been like for you to be back in arenas and stadiums this year?
Oh, awesome! I just had a basketball game between Seton Hall and UConn on Saturday.
I watched that game. Yeah,
hell of a game. I mean, just best game I've seen all year. And I had just been down to Baton Rouge, as you know, for the dedication of Dale Brown Court for the LSU Kentucky game. And so I was sort of basketball ready. I was fired up when I got there. And Donnie Marshall, the old UConn star, and I had a great game. I mean, it was unreal. It went to overtime. Seton Hall managed to get the win. But just being on the floor and hearing the crowd, because, last year in college basketball, we were elevated. We never saw the players, never saw coaches. We were doing everything by Zoom. Now to be able to go to shoot-arounds, visit with them, the same was true with football too, really, because Spencer and I did all of our meetings in person this year with the home teams. We did some Zooms with the away teams, but all of the home teams we met with in person. So you forget sometimes how fortunate you are to get to do this. And even though in 2021 we had seasons, they weren't the same. I think the 21-22 seasons for both football and basketball are just epic. And yeah, I know the Omicron variant is out there, and I know it's having an impact on all of us. But I love the stances that are being made now by the institutions and by the leagues to say, okay, if you can't have more than 7 scholarship players, we're not going to call it a forfeit. We'll adjust, we'll adapt, and but we need to live through this. We need to find a way. We've got vaccines, we've got boosters, we've got choices that can be made, and sports needs to be there for the mental aspect of people's lives. And I like the way we're sort of powering through it right now.
Well, we do have a championship game tonight, and I know you've been very outspoken in some of your criticism. And look, I don't know if the NCAA even still exists. Is it still around?
No, not really. No. And by the way, I still get on my phone. The NCAA needs to do this with football. NCAA hadn't been able to do this with football since 1984.
No.
People forget about the Supreme Court. Ironically, it was the universities of Georgia and Oklahoma. And by the way, without that Supreme Court ruling, I don't get to ESPN. I don't get to host game day. College football would not have been as accessible for people to watch on TV. So thank God that vote went 3-2 and the universities won. But I do think that now some of what's transpired and happened as it relates to the complete separation of the conferences in football from the NCAA is a good thing. It needed to happen. And now you see what's happened with the decentralization of the NCAA by Mark Emmert. At least he's admitting it. I'm powerless. He's at least admitting it now.
Exactly.
And anyone that is fallen in disfavor with the NCAA in terms of infractions, hey man, it's a get out of jail card. You're fine. No. You're good to go.
We knew that in this conference very well with a couple of schools to the west. Yes.
Yeah.
But it is kind of amazing to sit here and to hear what both Kirby and Nick had to say at one of their media functions when they said, well, we need to get legislation on this NIL issue. And I'm like, what legislation? Who's going to legislate? The NCAA's not. Congress has already said that's a sports problem. You guys deal with that. There is no way to legislate it, especially when you have what I call the 5 families of the Power 5 conferences who are going to make the rules that only benefit themselves and not college football as a whole.
Pat, the leadership of college football, which is the Power 5, I would add to that group now, because they've earned it, the American Conference. My friend Mike Oresco has been screaming P6 from the mountaintops since he took that job. And you know what? That league earned it with great teams that challenged the system. And finally this year, Cincinnati, broke the code and got in there with the help of having Notre Dame, one of the great brands, having their back.
Sure.
UCF didn't have a win at Notre Dame to help them. That never happened to them. Boise State never had that. Even though in the BCS they had really a better chance than they would have ever had in the college football playoff. But these commissioners now have to look at themselves in the mirror and say, guys, if we don't start leading and we don't start unifying, we have run our sport into the ditch. We need to fix this, and we need to fix it right away. And I think there needs to be some real come to Jesus meetings between these guys to figure it out. And I have oftentimes said that we need stabilization. And if their egos won't allow for a czar, then let's have a vote amongst themselves and choose a czar, just like we used to choose a BCS spokesman that was conference. Let's rotate it. For 3 years it's Sankey, for 3 years it's Jim Phillips, for 3 years it's Warren at the Big Ten. Just somebody be the final voice for the sport, and this really needs to happen. And frankly, I don't see it happening until these television contracts that are in place come to an end, which will begin in a couple of years. The Big Ten's is first, then comes the SEC, not the SEC, the ACC, the Big 12, and the Pac-12. All of this is coming up in 25. All right, so they've got a few years to figure this out. But by 2025, going into the 26th season, they have got to find a way to legislate. And they're the ones that can do it, okay? Take over your sport. Right. Somebody look out. All these guys are doing is taking care of their own constituency.
Right.
They're not taking care of the totality of the sport. Somebody needs to be a caretaker for all of college football. We don't have that.
And they need to do it because the NCAA let them down. The NCAA could have gotten a handle on all this stuff a long time ago, and that includes the transfer portal. If they had just put this rule in place a long time ago, we would have already settled into what college football looks like by now. But instead, we don't have no idea what it's going to look like.
You know what, Pat? I think with a wink and a nod, the NCAA, ever since they lost the Supreme Court ruling, has done whatever it could in a small way to damage college football. All right. What do they do? What does the NCAA really do? Well, they supposedly act as a policing agency. Well, I got news. All right. The staff at Yahoo does a better job on infractions than their infractions committee. All right. And they sanction bowl games. So what do? They keep sanctioning bowl games that people don't want. So but they, it's 41 one year, it's 43 the next. It's, anything that waters down, dilutes the product, because the NCAA cares about one thing, the men's NCAA basketball tournament. And as long as they've got it, that's their hook. Emmert can do nothing and make almost $4 million a year annually. Okay. Now that's not Roger Goodell money, but it's really good money for no work. I mean, he's really not doing anything.
No. Yeah, let me ask you about the game tonight, because I've kind of gone back and forth. I'm in the Georgia camp. I believe Georgia will win the game. I think that they have. I think they learned a lot from that first game. But the interesting part of it to me is, first of all, you never bet against Belichick and Saban. You just don't bet against them. You can pick against them. You don't bet against them. How will Nick attack it? Because look, he attacked them one way, but he knows that's what they're going to try to take away. They're going to try to get more pressure on Bryce Young. And then he turned around and attacked Cincinnati another way because they were playing that 3-3 stack, and he was able to run the ball. So what's he going to do now? And I can't wait to see. That, to me, is the most interesting part of the game. How does Alabama attack that Georgia defense?
Let me begin with this. I'm sure, even though you didn't have to work this morning, you did get up and you checked out a little bit of our friends in the electronic and print media. Okay. Have you seen as little buzz about a game nationally as this one? I mean,
I forgot it was being played.
Yeah.
I really did.
And so did a lot of fans. And again, this is part of driving the sport into the ditch that I was discussing. College football has ceded, the entire month of December to the NFL. The entire month. They have ceded New Year's Day. So badly have they given up New Year's Day because the Rose Bowl has to be played with the sun setting over the San Gabriels at a certain time.
Somebody's got to mention it. Yeah.
It's so bad on New Year's Day that the NHL can put a game on that millions of people watch. I mean, think about that.
Yeah.
In this country, we got, 3 or 4 million people watching a hockey game outdoors. Good for them, but shame on college football for doing that. So I'll start with that. But to the game itself, I feel this way. Alabama being an underdog twice to Georgia should tell you all you need to know. And fans don't get this, but Alabama is usually always favored because of their fan base.
Right.
Their fan base is so behind their team. They place their money on their team no matter what. Nick doesn't cover a lot of the time. but they're going to put their money down. All right. But in the case of Georgia, they've got deep pockets, maybe deeper, and their level of arrogance is just as great.
Yeah.
So Georgia is favored again because more people are betting for Georgia than are betting for Alabama at this stage. And Vegas
the line hasn't
Alabama.
moved. The line really hasn't moved the whole time.
It hasn't moved a lick. And, I mean, that's for Nick Saban and Alabama to be an underdog for the second time in a month to the same team is like feeding chum to a great white. I mean, it really is. Yeah. So I see it differently from you. And I'm sorry. I think as great a job as Kirby Smart has done at Georgia, I think his in-game coaching is questionable. I think his ability to make adjustments, particularly offensively, is not good at all. And I think that Alabama, regardless of how well Georgia or how enthused Georgia is for this game versus the other, that's the narrative that the Georgia fans have created. Well, our guys didn't play as hard. They didn't need. Well, the game was for the SEC championship. I mean, okay.
Which is kind of a big deal, yeah.
I realize the mindset of the modern day internet athlete is such that maybe they aren't the same as they were 20 years ago. So they figure, hey, we're going to have to play these guys again. So we don't need it as badly as they need it. They could have eliminated Alabama altogether if they had won the game. So to me, there was still some incentive to play well. And they didn't. So the matchups are an issue for Georgia against Alabama. Even with Mechie out, they're an issue. Stetson Bennett is a great kid, and I love the fact that that Kirby has stayed with him. And if they happen to win the game, it'll be one of the great stories of all time. Original walk-on, takes down the Heisman Trophy winner. That would be wonderful if that were to happen. And you know how close I am to Vince Dooley and to Tony Barnhart and Claude Felton, Jim Donnan, all those guys in Georgia. I really hope Georgia can pull it off and get this past them, but I just don't see it. I see Alabama putting pressure on Georgia to score. I think Georgia is accustomed to dominating the game with their power and their defense and controlling a game on the ground. Mm-hmm. You cannot do that when Alabama's explosive plays, their dynamic plays, are forcing you to score with them. That's not a game that Kirby is comfortable in, and I just think it's a problem. I really do. I see Alabama not only winning the game, but winning the game at least by as much, if not more, than they did the first game.
And that is what they did the first time. They, after Georgia got the lead, and then all of a sudden Alabama scored all these points, and they're like, well, wait a minute, now we got to score with you. And that's when Stetson Bennett made his mistakes. Again, I'm with you. And I'm also with you. It's kind of weird that Gator fans are just nervous as hell tonight. They want Alabama to win. I mean, you would think Alabama would be a big rival of Florida, but it's not even close. They want to be able to tell Georgia, all right, it's 42 years now you go without a championship. But there are people like Buck Bellew, like Tony Barnhart, like Claude Felton,
great guys.
That I just love to death. And if they win, I'll be happy for those people. I'm not going to be upset for those people.
My man Butler, the great kicker,
Oh, yes, absolutely.
I'm like, please, give these guys a bone. The dogs have been trying to gnaw on that bone for a while. But I just think it's when you get right down to it, okay, just the football part of this game. Georgia is better. Georgia is deeper. But Alabama has the matchups at the skill positions. Yeah. And to me, that's what this game comes down to. It comes down to matchups. I don't think Alabama played their best against Cincinnati. In fact, I would tell you, Cincinnati, other than being dominated up front, I thought they acquitted themselves really well against Alabama because they didn't give up as many big plays, right? Because they had really good corners. If Georgia could get the two corners that Cincinnati had, they'd have a better shot tonight. Now, I know a lot of fans don't want to hear that. Fans don't want to hear that a group of five team has better corners than they have. But to match up with Alabama, Cincinnati sort of hung in there because they didn't give up quite as many big plays. Now, they didn't have a pass rush, and ultimately more plays were going to be made for Alabama to win the game. But I think, Alabama matched up better against Georgia than they did against Cincinnati. I mean, they really did. And that's why they scored as much as they did. I honestly, there's part of me, the cynical part of me that wants a blowout so the rating will be in the tank. The rating will not be as good. The rating won't be as good because it's a regional game.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. It's a rematch. The one thing that gives Georgia hope is that historically in rematches, it favors the team that lost the first time. We saw that with LSU in 11. We've seen it in past years with rematches involving teams in the Big Ten whenever they've been in these situations before. Right. But I just believe from a matchup standpoint, I really like the Tide. And, people at LSU, by the way, I live in Louisiana, they feel the same way about Alabama losing as Florida fans feel about Georgia losing.
Yeah, they don't have any real rivalry with Georgia. They play them every once. With the SEC and how poorly and lazily the SEC schedules, which don't even get me started on that rant. They see Georgia about once every 12 years or so. It's no big deal to them.
I think there's also a misunderstanding among a lot of fans that because I feel this way about the game, and I know. I mean, the New Year's Eve ratings were awful. Why would you do that again? Why would college football do that to itself again? This notion that we're going to change the paradigm of viewing in this country by sports fans between the ages of 18 and 49. Are you out of your mind? I mean, I realize the Rose Bowl has a contract and they were hanging it over your head, but do something about it. You had time to figure out another time to play. You didn't have to play on New Year's Eve again. But I think a lot of people feel like I'm raining on the SEC parade, and I'm not. Look, the SEC has the best two teams. Best two teams are playing. That's not the point. The point is the process of how we got here. And, we had more upsets and more great games during this past regular season than we've ever had. Okay, we had all this momentum. And then we pause. After the conference championship games, we take a month off. I mean, that makes no sense. And meanwhile, the NFL is adding regular season dates. That 18th week was incredible.
Yeah.
From 11 o'clock in the morning, until midnight. Okay, the playoffs were being determined on every network that you have on your television set. That gets the country buzzing, and college football is not buzzing. Okay, the BCS, at least during the BCS, it buzzed. We had more buzz about the game of college football, even with that godforsaken system that, as you know, I loathed. So we got to fix it, and we've got to put something besides meaningless, trivial bowl games on that no one really cares about, but maybe people bet on. Between December the 18th and January the 1st, we could start this thing, get the first round, the quarters, and the semis out of the way, and have the national championship on New Year's Day easily.
I think there's a way to do both. One day, you and I'll sit down and I'll explain it to you. My theory on the scheduling of how you could do this, but we all know somebody needs to take charge of college football, and I'm nominating you. I will put you in charge. All I got to do is say it.
Well, I'm not going to stop pounding the drum at all. No. I haven't for 30 years. And by the way, you know me well enough to know that I was talking about this at ESPN. I talked about it at CBS when I was doing the SEC. What network I've worked for has never changed my stance on this. And that's another issue, Pat. With the world we're living in today and in all forms of media, whether it be news, and now we're seeing it seep into sports, there's this belief that guys in our profession are taking the side of the people we work for. That is so untrue. No. So not. No. I had a little tete-a-tete about what Kirk had to say about Cincinnati on Twitter, and I felt it necessary to call him out on it. But I respect Kirk Herbstreit. I do. I've always respected Kirk. I think whatever he may have said most recently, he was tired. He flew overnight and he was trying to do studio as well as games. That happens when you're talking about issues. I have no axe to grind with anybody at ESPN. I think the world of them. I wouldn't be where I am today without the time I spent in Connecticut. So, no, this is just about doing the right thing. And
right.
We all need to support one another. We all need to do what is best for the greater good of college football. And that's really all I'm discussing here. But for whatever reason, okay, some in our profession are being muzzled. There are a lot of topics, a lot of hot topics, issues that need to be discussed that the suits won't let them discuss. And I'm happy to report that at my place, no one's ever said to me, Tim, don't go that route. Don't say that. They allow me to speak from the heart, and I'm going to do that.
Tim, I don't think they give out Emmys for our podcast, but if they do, maybe you got a shot at another one up there. Maybe you can use this one to prop open the doors or something like that.
Well, as I used to say, I've had more enemas than Emmys, but I appreciate it.
Hey, good for you, man. Hey, it's great talking to you. Great seeing you. I haven't seen you in a long time, and always one of my favorite people in the world. And we appreciate you taking the time to come on the podcast.
Well, thank you. You can call me anytime. I used to love having you on my shows. That thing lasted for 15 years, and I loved having you on. And because I knew that I'd always get the straight goods, And I miss you. So anytime you need me, just give me a buzz.
All right, my man. Thanks, Tim. Appreciate it. Tim Brando, from, of course, Fox Sports. See, I almost screwed up and said CBS because he's been so many places. And that's how you get all the Emmys, You keep going, hey, let me try it here. But one of the best in the business, when he's doing a game, I am watching. There are people in this profession, I turn the sound off, not Tim Brando. We have to get a break. We'll come back on another duly noted podcast presented by Titan MRI from the Shakow and Mercadante Studios. And we'll do all our fun stuff we love to do. We got all that coming up. Adam's Rib Go Gator of the weekend. Alex Wesley Construction. I'm giving you my way too early top 12. Leonardo's quick picks, Hesser and Kipke Monday spreads, and hand law 3 things. All that more when we return on another duly noted podcast from the Shakow and Mercadante Studios.
Car accidents, trucking accidents, motorcycle accidents, and wrongful death. If injured or killed by the negligence of others, who will fight for the compensation you deserve? Shakow and Mercadante, 5 lawyers, more than 100 years of combined legal experience, millions in settlements and verdicts. Call Shakow and Mercadante, 371-3000. Rebuilding lives.
Titan MRI, North Central Florida's premier independent diagnostic testing MRI facility. At Titan MRI, we're focused on you, the patient, having a great customer experience. Our MRI equipment is modern and 75% quieter than any unit in its class. And our MRI unit has one of the largest openings of any of the newer high-strength MRI units, which allows comfortable scanning for potential claustrophobic and larger patients. At Titan MRI, we look forward to serving you.
Another duly noted podcast comes to you from the Coach's Podcast Room at Spurrier's Gridiron Grill and Celebration Point. You can watch and listen to us on Facebook and YouTube for every podcast that we do on Mondays and Fridays at 2 o'clock. Listen to the podcast whenever on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Overcast, any of the other 39 platforms where you can find this podcast or your favorite podcast. Remember to like, follow, and subscribe. If you have any questions or comments, leave them in the comments section below or call me if you want to do some advertising at 352-317-3444.
Great food, great atmosphere, a diverse menu, everything made from scratch, plenty of space, and locally owned. These are all the characteristics of a great restaurant, and you can find each and every one of them right here in Gainesville at Ballyhoo Grill. Ballyhoo Grill prepares all of their food fresh every day, from their salad dressing to their award-winning soups. Bring your family and enjoy dinner under the Tim Brando Tiki Hut while listening to live music. Or if you're running low on time to eat out, they also deliver through Uber Eats, Bite Squad, and Postmates. A Gainesville staple that's been open for over 30 years. Check out Ballyhoo Grill on Facebook or at ballyhoogrill.com.
Hello there, everybody. I'm Pat Dula, of course, from another duly noted podcast. This is a great Adam brewer, and he's just opened up a place here, Adam's Rib To Go. What would give you the idea to do this, to have a to-go place like this?
We really like the fast concept, being able to get the barbecue. Now we have this new online ordering. So before it was a call ahead carry out, quick service. We have like a curbside kind of a deal where, everything's ready to go for you. And then we thought, wow, we have a really great dine-in concept, but how can we make this streamlined for the customer and make it easy and accessible for all parts of town?
Adam's Rib To Go. Come on down and enjoy it. More than 6,000 veterans take their lives each year, with more than 500 of them occurring in Florida. The Fire Watch Council was established to unite our war fighters and allies to stand watch and build a mutual aid network of veterans and civilian volunteers across Florida trained to identify risk factors of veterans in crisis and to direct those veterans to needed resources. You can invest an hour to join our support network by becoming a watchstander to stand in the gap and support our veterans. Go to thefirewatch.org to learn how to get involved, get off the sidelines, and take a stand on behalf of our veterans. All right, we are back on another duly noted podcast presented by Titan MRI from the Shakow and Mercandani studios. One thing that Tim was talking about, like they need somebody like Billy Napier to be in charge of college football. And I'm not saying Billy Napier is the guy, but I'm just saying somebody who would just go into a problem and solve it. And that's what Billy's done at Florida so far. I mean, he's solved problems. Now there's going to be other problems, and he's going to have to solve them. But that's what college football lacks, are people that want to solve the college football problem that they have. And yet, and here's where I disagree with Tim Brando on this. I believe that I believe that college football is those bowl games that don't matter. They do matter in terms of ESPN and the money they get and the money they give out. So that's what I'm saying. There's a way to do both. Anyway. All right, it is time for our Adam's Rib To Go Gator of the weekend. And we had some people to choose from. Could have gone with Colin Castleton. There was a possibility there, 22-10. But I don't like to go with guys who lose when you're on a losing team. We went with Sloan Blakely. And Sloan Blakely, if you don't know her, she is a freshman at the University of Florida, part of that unbelievable recruiting class, number one recruiting class in America. And in her first meet, she won the all-around, which says a lot about her. And a really good story by Scott Carter at Gators, Gatorsports.com. What is their site? FloridaGators.com. There's so many sites out there. But anyway, she was the first person since 2012 to win the all-around in her first ever meet. And the first one was Keitra Hunter, who was unbelievable gymnast, part of a national championship team here. Sloan Blakely may be part of one as well. Eventually, maybe this year. So she is our Adam's Rib To Go Gator of the weekend. Congratulations to her. And if she wants, I'll buy her a nice Adam's Rib, some ribs. How about that? So all she got to do is let me know. I'm allowed to do those kind of things now. You weren't supposed to be able to do those things before, but you can do them now. All right, it is time for our Alex Wesley Construction 12-pack. We're going to give you your first top 12 for 2022. And for those of you who don't know, we do the 12-pack because we're doing things based on the college football eventually going to a 12-team playoff, and that's where we started it. But we do a lot of different things. But here we are. I'm going to give it to you, and it doesn't matter with what happens tonight. What happens tonight has nothing to do with what my first top 12 is going to look like. And number one is Alabama, mainly because of Bryce Young. And Bryce Young is going to be surrounded by great players. You know that. I think he's the best quarterback in the country. He's a Heisman Trophy winner. There'll be a lot of pressure on him. But I tell you what, guy's really good. I got Clemson, too. I think Clemson makes a comeback. I know they lost another starter right after I put this list together, who decided to go pro. But I think Clemson's going to make a comeback again. They don't have a lot to contend with in that conference. 3, Ohio State, C.J. Stroud. They got so many good players. Look, and then 4, Georgia. I think Georgia may drop back a touch. But what were they as a seed this year? 3, right? So if they're the 4th seed next year, they didn't really drop back much. I like Georgia again next year. I think they're going to be really good. 5, Oklahoma, and I'm kind of taking a leap there. I'm not sure that's a good pick right there. 6, Utah, and I do think that's a good pick. Utah is going to be really good next year, and unfortunately for Florida, they open up with them. 7, Wisconsin, should be really good next year. You know, the team I almost stuck in here was USC, because I see where now the word is that Caleb Williams may end up going to USC because Jackson Dart, their starting quarterback, is in the transfer portal. Who's not in the transfer portal? Let's make a list of everybody who's not in the transfer portal. Number 8, Oklahoma State. Really liked watching that team this year. Number 9, Iowa. Did not like watching them at all, but, man, they just win games. They certainly could have easily won their bowl game, and then people would be freaking out about them. 10, Michigan. I think Michigan does fall back a little bit this year, and it'll be interesting to see what happens with Harbaugh, but I think I know what's going to happen. Number 11, Texas A&M. Texas A&M I might have higher. Some people are going to put them higher in the preseason because of this number 1 recruiting class, but I think that recruiting class is going to need a year to mature, before they get to that point. They were 8-4 this year. If they'd played their bowl game without a quarterback, because they wouldn't have had one, because Calzado had already left, they probably would have been 8-5. So there is that. And number 12, Notre Dame, because Notre Dame has to be on the list, obviously. That is our Alex Wesley Construction 12-pack. We appreciate Alex Wesley so much for his sponsorship, and what a great place Alex Wesley Construction is. I've had a lot of work done on my house, done by Alex and his group, and they are major sponsors of the Bob Dooley Invitational, which is coming up with its 27th edition on April 30th. I feel like I got to get to work on that pretty soon. We got a lot of good stuff, and we appreciate that as well. And in fact, I want to go ahead and thank Rick Davis for what he's done for us. I know they're not a sponsor of the show, but I still want to put it out there. I mean, what he's given us is unbelievable. All right, so that is our Alex Wesley Construction 12-pack. Love where you live with Alex Wesley Construction. Our Hesser and Kipke Monday spreads. These are kind of fun ones this week. They're brought to you by Hesser and Kipke. They're always fun. A law firm based in Hale Plantation, specializing in employment, workers' comp, and family law. Visit their website at www.hklawfl.com or call Ken and Jennifer, or Ken or Jennifer. I don't think they can both answer the phone at the same time, but you can call them at 352-339-9920. Double sponsors that they are, Hesser and Kipke. We love them. And the Monday spreads are playoff games. You already know the spread for the game tonight. It's 2.5, Georgia. If you didn't know that, now you know it. But yeah, I think you already know it. I'm pretty sure you did. So here are the spreads. Early spreads on all the playoff games. Vegas in Vegas. See, it's perfect because it's a Vegas spread, right? Vegas is 6.5-point underdog at Cincinnati, which is, Cincinnati is, God, when's the last time they won a playoff game? Was Ken Anderson the quarterback? I think it's been a long time. But I do think they're a lot better team than Vegas, Las Vegas. That'll be an interesting game. That'll be fun to watch. It's going to be a fun weekend next week. I can't wait for it. I love playoff everything, but I really love playoff NFL. New England is getting 4.5 at Buffalo. New England with a total egg in their Week 18 game against Miami, and it did not work out well. Philadelphia is getting 9 at Tampa Bay. I would not bet against Tampa Bay, but 9 points is a lot. San Fran getting 3 against Dallas. I watched that at Dallas, of course. I watched that game, the Rams and the 49ers, and I'm kind of a Rams fan, but I don't know. After I watched that game, I went, maybe I'm not that much of a Rams fan. I am such a bandwagon guy when it comes to the NFL. I was on the Seahawks bandwagon big time. I even bought a Seahawks shirt and shorts. Yeah, what the hell? Now Russell Wilson's going to get out of there. I don't know. Pittsburgh is 12.5-point underdogs at Kansas City. That seems like a lot of points to give anybody in a playoff game. But Pittsburgh, of course, kind of backed its way in, but they got in. And then Arizona is a 4.5-point underdog at the Rams. If I was going to make one bet on an underdog, it would be Arizona against the Rams. But that's me. Maybe not Hesser and Kipke. Maybe they don't agree with me on that. But that is the Hesser and Kipke Monday Spreads, and we appreciate them so much for being a double sponsor here on the duly noted, or another duly noted podcast. Of course, on Friday, we'll have the games of the weekend. It's so much fun to kind of come up with those now because you've got SEC basketball. Now you don't have football, but you have NFL football. There's a lot of games of the weekend, so we'll expand that a little bit on Friday. On Friday's show. Friday's show, by the way, Robbie Andrew will be in here. So, we get Robbie in here every couple of weeks, and he is sponsored by Hand Law. We'll get to the Hand Law 3 things in a minute. But we need to get to Leonardo's and Millhopper Quick Picks. We had a couple of winners from last week. Not a lot of people got in. I mean, it was like the lowest ever. I don't know if I just didn't advertise it properly, but I'll try to make sure I do this week. But look, the bottom line is there's only one game. Georgia -2.5 at Alabama. Just pick a winner. Send it to patrickdooley54@gmail.com, and you can qualify. And we may go ahead and pick a winner on Friday. If we get enough, I tell you what, if we get enough people that get in the contest, and we have our regulars it's almost like a bar where you sit down and all these people sit around the bar and make their picks. But every once in a while we get people in we'll get women in, we'll get all these different kind of people in out of nowhere that I haven't heard from before. So get in. I mean, it's a chance for you to win $25 at Leonardo's, among other prizes. We give away a lot of good stuff, hats and stuff like that. So our Leonardo's and Millhopper Quick Picks. Georgia -2.5 against Alabama in the snow of Indianapolis. Great job, college football. Put a game indoors in the snow. It's perfect. All right, so that is our Leonardo's Millhopper Quick Picks. Finally today, our Hand Law 3 things. We love our Hand Law, and we love they'll be obviously double sponsoring on Friday with Robbie in here because they sponsor Robbie Andrews' appearances. The 3 things is presented by Hand Law, a Florida law firm which helps clients with government. You can learn more about Hand Law by visiting its website at www.hand.law. The firm is available for consultation in Jacksonville. Number 1, this Djokovic drama. What the hell is going on there? Well, we can't let you in because you're not vaccinated. Well, now maybe we will. And I don't care. I don't even care about the Australian Open. This is the only thing that's made me interested. Think about, I would guess Chris Fowler is doing this thing where he's going to, he's covering the championship game and then going to Australia. I would assume he's doing that because he usually does that. I don't know. What a life that is. But it's just, I don't know. I don't get people who won't get vaccinated. I just don't get it. If you're a viewer of this show and you get mad at me for that, go ahead. I don't care. I just have to deal with it. All right, number 2. It was Black Monday, as it almost always is in the NFL. There are 5 openings right now in the NFL. Of course, Vic Fangio got fired. Nagy, is it Nagy? Nagy or Nagy? The Bears coach, whoever he is. I don't know. He did not do a very good job there. They fired Zimmer, Mike Zimmer, who's a really good coach, but they didn't make the playoffs. And then the weird one was Flores, because Miami fired him. He went 8-1 in his last 9 games. So winning is not all that matters there. Apparently his relationship with Tua wasn't good, wasn't good with the GM. Some guys have relationship problems, but you go 8-1 in the NFL, is that easy? I don't think it is. That seems like a dumb move on my part, but it's your problem. That's their problem, not mine. All right, and finally, number 3, I want to give a lot of credit to the women's basketball team at Florida. They won their game yesterday against Texas A&M, which was ranked 24th or 25th, depending on the poll. Won it in double overtime. They're clearly playing better than they were before. And again, they lost Lavender Briggs again, who you thought was going to be the heart and soul of that team. And they're doing a heck of a job. So congratulations to Kelly and that basketball team. I did a story on her earlier. I watched the celebration video on Twitter. It was really cool. It was nice to see Florida women's basketball celebrating and happy. And they're 11-5. I mean, it's not like they're terrible. I mean, they're probably not going to make the NCAA tournament either. But maybe they go on a run here. That was a good win for them. All right, I am so far over budget, right? And Reagan has done a great job of hanging in there with me. But I know this show's gone long. We knew it would because we love talking to Tim, and we like with Tim Brando. You kind of like, all right, I gotta end it here. It's getting long. Nah, I got one more for him, and I loved having him on. Robbie Andrew on Friday, and then we're gonna work on my goal tomorrow is to work on guests for the next week and the coming weeks. And appreciate Reagan again for doing a great job here in his role of dealing with me, which is hard enough right there. That's going to do it for me, though. I am Pat Dooley. I am deep. I am way back, and I am out of here.